Welcome back, and on this segment we want to talk about this tree that's in a different place in town other than my house, and it's a October Red Glory maple tree that was put in here a couple of years ago, professionally installed and all that. At the time though, the people that planted it didn't put this flower bed around it. And that's one thing we want to talk about among other things here today. One thing, these homeowners have done a good job of pruning this maple tree up, because maples are so bad to fork, and fork with a weak joint. And so it's been pruned back when it was smaller, and of course with maple trees you just continue to prune them till they get so tall that you just really don't want to climb up there and cut that weak fork out of it, and then you just leave it. But at least for the time being, they've done a real good job of pruning those weak forks out of there. Of course, the trees stayed alive for a couple of years now. That's to their benefit, and it's grown to the point that it's not staked or anything, and that's also a good thing when you get a tree to the stage that it's not just about to blow over when it's first planted. Why, you need to get the stakes away from it and let it kind of do its own thing. That's the good points. But now the bad points is this flower bed that's around this tree. That's a big no-no. It doesn't happen in nature. It's not to the benefit of the tree. It may not kill this tree in a year or two, but eventually it will. First off, there's pathogens that are in the ground that the tree has the ability to ward off through the root system. But whenever you've got those same pathogens in the soil up on the bark on the tree, they're able to gain access to the tree, and so they can get into the tree, they can rot the bark off and things like that. So that's a big mistake to have that up there. Another similar mistake is on a lot of trees that are damaged due to the ice storms. People go and they cut some firewood right there that's handy laying on the ground underneath this tree, and then they stack that firewood up against the tree. Well, that's a perfect place for insects and everything in the world to have a good environment there, and first thing you know, the bark's rotting off and some of that. So if you're guilty of doing that, or in the future, take that wood somewhere and stack it in a pile. Don't stack it against the edge of the tree, because these barks on trees are pretty, they're pretty tender and stuff. Another thing that happens so much of the time, and I get a lot of calls about, is sun scald on the bark of trees, and maples for some reason are pretty bad about that. When the west sun goes down and it's hot in the summer and it shines against the west side of these trees, it'll bubble the bark and do some of that kind of stuff, and there's really not much you can do about it other than shade the tree, and most of us aren't going to do that. But the number one criteria, if you've got a tree that is like that, is to make sure that you cut that bark away enough that it's not holding water. That's one of the worst things that can happen to a tree, is holding water. So make sure if you've got that, that's what you do. Now back to this flower bed that's growing around this tree. Yeah, that may be pretty and everything, but it keeps you from getting water down to the tree. If you were gonna, even if you had something that kept the stuff away from the bark, you'd need a soaker hose around the flower bed so that you could get water down into the root zone of the tree. And of course, the root ball on this tree when it was planted was about 2 foot in diameter. So even though there are roots out, there's a lot of roots that are underneath this, and a lot of this mulching stuff is going to soak up that water, and then the roots are going to try to grow into this flower bed area. There's a show that we did several years ago that had maple trees similar to this, and they had a small little area around them that had soil in it, and we advised the people at the time to take those off, and they did. But now there's an area that's showing above the ground that's real unsightly for a maple tree. And of course, maple trees, they like their roots close to the top of the ground anyway, so you don't want to do anything else that makes their roots that much closer to the ground.